date from like 3000 BCE. Where do they surface? In Mesopotamia, with the high concentration in the geography that corresponds to Iran, to current Iran. And basically, it's an arched piece of wood, right? And just strings strung across. I'm sure you have done a little bit of harp history, that you're familiar with that. 1,000 years later, so this is 2000 BCE, another type of harps seem to proliferate in Mesopotamia. And here you see this gentleman sitting on a, very much like our harp bench, and holding a harp which is now angular. So by angular, I mean there's a sound box in the upper part, and there's a wood rod, and they are attached to each other at an angle. All right, so there is something of a construction there. There's a mechanism involved. And then we're not sure exactly how he's holding it, but he seems to be playing with his right hand. Anyway, never mind. All these depictions are, they contain a lot of fantasy, actually, the old depictions. But this is a different construction. So 1,000 years later, the harps evolved and became angular. So this is 600 AD, all right? So it is 2,600 years later than the previous image we saw. And this is in Iran. And you see a boat here. Is it clear for everyone that there's a boat? And there are harp players, 6 of them.
Ensemble.
It's a harp ensemble, yes. and the scene depicts a king going for a expedition, either to war or hunting, something that requires courage in any case, and then has along his ensemble of harpists. They all look female, you see a lot of images associated with Changs with political power. A lot of depictions like that. It is very unlike the images we have of, later images we have, harps and angels and all these things. It's very much associated with hunting, war and things like that, because the musicians are employed in the court, and it shows the power of the royalty that they can employ so many musicians, probably. Now let's come to the third harp construction that we know of. This design was introduced. This is the basis of the modern harp, so the triangular design. They also call it the frame or the pillar harp. And that's 800 AD. So it is only 200 years after, 200 years earlier than the previous image, okay? So the last image was 600 AD, this is 800 AD. So they seem to have existed simultaneously, although this was introduced in Europe, what corresponds to Europe now. The angular harps continue to exist, all right? Although there was this better tuning holding harp. And now let's look at 1558. This is the court of Süleyman the Magnificent, a very famous Ottoman ruler, a Turkish ruler. This is a scene from his court where you see very clearly the chang, another lute-like instrument, maybe something like a kanun or zither. There are 2 dancers here, and then singer and a percussionist, and then it's something like a kemanche. It's a bowed instrument on that side. So this is 3,500 years later than the very first angular harps were introduced, right? So what happens to the construction, to the overall design? Do you see any changes? No. So this design existed without interruption, obviously, for 3,500 years. And instruments evolve, but harps haven't. It's very interesting that harps had one kind of design, and then another one, and then another one, but they just kind of kept being played, performed. And I find that really fascinating. So to wrap up the harp history part, in 1660, it was noted, that's the last written testimony we have, that there were Chang players in Istanbul. Okay, that's very few, because already we're talking about Istanbul, which is a city of thousands of people, and that there are only 10 Chang players. When you look at the amount of images in book illustrations, in art history, in the literature, all the depictions and descriptions, it's very, very few. That means in 1660 it was on its way out. It was no longer performed. And so no Chang has survived from our geography. I mean our, like Mesopotamia, basically. So just to look at our modern harp, which is only a design that exists only since 1,200 years ago, and this is as opposed like over 3,000 years design. So, and I was unable to paint in blue what corresponds to India and all the remaining, I don't know what happened to my computer, but all this area is also blue. But this is like the geographical expansion of angular harps. So they traveled along the Silk Road, and such harps were performed all the way up to China. And although they disappeared in current Turkey and the surrounding geography, in China, they never disappeared. They have been continuously played in rural China, like an instrument that peasants used a lot, actually. And that will be the next chapter of my research, actually, of my work about the Chang and angular harps and ancient harps, because there's a lot of research to be done on these harps in terms of performance, in terms of making instruments and all that. So just to show you that these instruments were played in a huge, area, basically. So about 400 years after the last sighting, right? Remember in 1660 there were 10 Chang players in Istanbul. I got really curious. I wanted to have an instrument like that and be able to hear its sound and see if I could play something with it, because I had returned to Turkey after many years abroad, and I felt like I need to kind of like build maybe a different kind of identity, or complete myself also by being Turkish and by being in that country. And I thought, well, okay, let me just jump and see where I land, basically. And that involves, of course, making prototypes. So you have to make an instrument out of just descriptions. You have to find sources for music, what to play, even though you have it. Or is it possible to even play? Because that's another question. And you need to make collaborations so you can learn what to do with an ancient instrument and in a different tradition. And then I had always in my mind, if I was able to make something worthwhile, then I should be able to share it as well. So this dissemination part came through performances, which also enabled me to learn. Because I'll tell you how you learn traditional music. It's not from books. And it's not even applied. You really have to sit with a master and repeat, play along and repeat and repeat and repeat. That's the way it's taught. So performances allowed me to actually keep learning. And then recordings were another way of sort of like, getting things consolidated. And then, of course, scores. The whole score issue is very interesting, which I will tell you later about it. And then I thought, well, if something is good coming through this, maybe it creates some collaborations, and then maybe I can have some kind of an outreach with the harp community. So I had sort of like very general ideas, but one direction. So I had to create a project to be able to accomplish these things, because you don't just like make an instrument. You need funding, actually. You need to convince an instrument maker who is going to be dedicating, I don't know, maybe a couple of, not a couple of hours, a couple of 100 hours, actually. You need to either be able to buy that time from an instrument maker who is going to only make one instrument and for you. And there won't be another one waiting in line, going to the showroom, oh, let me buy a Chang. So it is a very time-consuming and sort of like it requires dedication, so it requires funding, basically. So I thought of approaching a foundation that had an orchestra, which met a couple of times a year. And do you see where the Black Sea is? Okay, yeah. So this orchestra united all the countries around the Black Sea. They had musicians from every single country, and they would also feature as solo instruments sometimes one traditional instrument from one of the countries. So there would be a concerto, I don't know, for balalaika, for example, and then another one for kamancha from Azerbaijan. And then I kind of thought, well, they're interested in traditional instruments, and although the cheng is not traditional, is more ancient instrument. Maybe I can convince them to do something. So, but because they're an orchestra, they have to put their orchestra to use. So I said, let's commission. I wrote down a project proposal. I said, if we commission a concerto for harp and cheng, because with the cheng, maybe we cannot kind of support the whole concerto, but to have this dialogue between the instruments would be interesting. And then I said, well, maybe we can make a prototype. That seemed very interesting to them because everything kind of served their way of actually organizing themselves, which is always to making concerts and recordings and things like that. So it would lead to results that they would wish. But we had to start a year ahead. So they decided we would play this at the Istanbul Music Festival, would make the premiere. I got pregnant in between. I said, I am not working this year. So they delayed, they waited for me to have my baby and everything. And after that, in the meantime, Hasan Uçarsu, the composer of the contemporary piece I played last night, he started writing a concerto about 33 minutes long for both the cheng and the harp. And we made the premiere in 2008, and then we made a recording. So this was very sort of like a safe ground for me to be on, although we had this the cheng component. It was still written music. Everything was determined for me as I was raised until that point. I had to read a score and play exactly as it was written in the score. So my comfort zone, basically. And of course, the responsibility is with the conductor. I just switched between instruments. It felt very comfortable. But let's go back and let's go back to the journey of making this prototype. So they agreed to fund this project, which had the results that they wished. But this making of the cheng was a very painstaking process for me. All we had was this description, all right? And there was one person who had made a cheng in Turkey and was not a really instrument maker, but he had made one and he was performing it. And I approached him and I said, well, we have such and such project and we're looking for an instrument maker to make an instrument. Would you be willing to? And the reaction was that, oh, wow, but I play this. You play the harp. You just keep playing the harp. And if you need a cheng player in your concerto, I'll come and play it. I said, oh no, I want to play the cheng. So basically, I respected the fact that he didn't want to make another instrument for someone else. Maybe it's his private research. But just to tell me not to play the cheng was the wrong thing to say. Okay, so the most important thing is that you can make an instrument like that very easily. With these descriptions and looking at images and these technical specs, it's not difficult to imagine an instrument. But the difficult part was to locate this leather membrane because the soundboard is covered not in a sort of a plywood or wood, but leather. And what kind of leather? It's a very specific kind of leather, which is very difficult to find and very difficult to apply as well.
So the leather is applied on some kind of support, or it's just stretched?
It's stretched. It's stretched and until now glued, but I don't think that's the way it should be. So, I will tell you a little bit more about it. I think that it should be secured in a way that it is movable. You should be able to stretch it, much like, when you do embroidery, you have like a frame and then you can tighten it, right? I think it should be like that, but that's another, this is for the next chapter. So this was the instrument made in 2008, and it was a very nerve-wracking process because the first maker was a master's student, okay? And he was willing to put in the time, but he used materials like where the tuning pins, for example, were out of wood, a different kind of wood than the rest of the instrument, which meant if the humidity changed, they behave differently. So, and that would absorb more humidity usually, which meant that it became thicker. And then when you wanted to tune, it would crack or it would get stuck. So while I was learning this concerto, I had this huge challenge of things breaking, things getting stuck. And of course, just the mere fact of playing an instrument sitting on the ground, with extended periods of time meant that, after half an hour, you can't even get up. You don't even feel your ankles or legs. So it was a huge learning process, but I loved it. I mean, I kind of endured until the day we premiered it. And in the premiere, I had the guy sit, the instrument maker, in the first row, like just below me, with his toolbox, because you never knew what was next, So I was like, So this is the concerto. Basically, that's like a page from that. It has 5 movements, and then I'll give you a little sample of that. Hopefully this will work. Okay. Yeah. No. How do we do that? Sorry about that. I knew it would happen. Something happened to my PowerPoint presentation.
That's the sound of Chang.
Yeah.
Something went
Okay.
wrong with that letter.
This is can you turn the volume up a little bit? This is very soft.
Let's see. I don't know which one it's coming out of. I don't hear anything now.
Sorry, the volume is very...
Yeah, it's not coming from here.
We hear it. So this is a moment from the... You hear how primitive the sound is.
Was the Chang amplified for this?
A little bit, yes. This is from the live performance, so it's a little... So it's a little dialogue between the Chang and the orchestra. Okay. So the piece was organized so that I would start on the pedal harp. And then it's one continuous. There's no break between the movements. It's in 5 movements. And then so the second movement, I have to get up and then go to the other side of the conductor, with the Chang, which is on a podium, and then play the second movement on that. Start the third movement on the Chang. And while they have an orchestral interlude, move to the other. So it was a whole choreography. And it wasn't completely split like 1 here, 2 here, 3, 4. He organized so that it sort of all made a nice choreography together. And then we made also a chamber orchestra version, which we played in the World Harp Congress in Amsterdam in 2008, was it, I think, yeah. Okay, so next one. Oh, it's not going. Okay, so my next step was, I wanted to remain in an area that felt secure for me for a while, because already the instrument was quite a bit of a challenge. So as I was trying to learn, from traditional musicians, how to play a score, how to interpret traditional music, I tried to insert Chang into my existing path. So whether it was playing a concerto, so put the Chang in it. Okay, so and if it was like doing a new collaborative work with the electronic music composer, let's also have the Chang in it. And so we made with Erdem Hevacıoğlu, who now lives in New York. It's a very good electronic music composer. We recorded all the sounds you can obtain from all sorts of harps that we could find. So pedal harp, lever harp, Celtic harp, the Chang, electro harp, and we made a sound bank, basically. We recorded all the normal sounds and all the extended techniques, all the effects you can obtain through extended techniques. And then he created a work which has a strong electronic component to it, but also a live Chang part. And then on top of that, he is also involved because he still manipulates the sound while we do the live performance. So this was in 2010, and we worked and we premiered, and then again we made a recording. So this all felt very sort of comfortable for me to do these things, although the Chang was a novelty, but the type of work was all right. Then, while all this was happening, I was trying to play the Chang with more, how do you say, maybe in a more traditional framework. And the only way, as I said before, to learn was just to be in touch with musicians who wanted to play together. Most of them they wanted to only play concerts, actually. They don't even want to rehearse. Because in traditional music, the rehearsal part is quite different. Everybody knows the tunes, all the music. They kind of get together. They kind of agree on the traffic, basically, that they're going to follow in each tune, and then the whole art is actually shared on stage during the performance. So the idea of rehearsing things very thoroughly didn't exist. That meant I had to learn in a very short amount of time, because I come from an area where we rehearse hours and hours, right? So that my window of opportunity for learning was tiny. And also, just understanding how this music, what it was even made of, it took a long time. Just looking at the score, you can't tell. And I'll show you a little bit how or why. So this yesterday, as said, first of all, there is a melodic component. So already there are intervals that I couldn't hear, I couldn't decipher. And the way they're written on the score, it doesn't tell you how small or how big the interval is. You just have to know that, in this makam, this interval is this much. Okay, you know it by ear. So basically, it was just by tuning the harp, but how low to tune a certain interval. And once we tune it, we can't change it in a piece. So we had to find music that's suitable where the amount of modulation is kind of limited, but there's still a nice flavor to the piece. So basically, I was playing with like the real masters of Turkish music, and here I was with my tiny Chang sitting on the floor, and they're very chair people. They sit very properly like this, and I'm here on the ground. And I don't know how to repeat where they want to repeat. What is the interval? What is this and that? I was so nervous all the time, but in a way I had to go through that, and possibly like all ego I had, whatever was left of it after even years of struggling as a musician, was completely sort of erased, because you just have to learn from scratch.
Şirin, what year do you came with those two gentlemen and you played?
2015.
15.
Yeah.
I remember you were sitting on the floor.
Yeah.
Playing Chang.
Yeah. Usually I use a podium, but when there's no podium, you sit on the floor. But just to understand, how this music moves a little bit, the only way was to sort of endure these difficulties, basically. And the rhythmic component of it is if you have an idea about Indian music, for example, they also use syllables for describing rhythmic patterns. Turkish music is like that as well. Although in Indian music is more developed, even more developed. But there are 55 rhythmical patterns, and you have to know, because once a piece begins, every measure is the same rhythmic pattern. All right. It doesn't change in traditional music. So you kind of, or idea of rubato or making phrasing, also using like tempo change, doesn't exist in Turkish music. The expression is like obtained through different ways actually. But so also I was very late, with things. Unless we had a percussionist play with us, which like a conductor basically, just keeping time. It wasn't so easy to get through these rhythms. You have you don't have always notes like that, of course. You have longer values on them, but you have to keep very, very strict. So, basically this was my learning process. The other things related to the performance practice side of it, there's the concept of meşk. Meşk is, it really means learning by playing with a master. So it's oral transmission, and you sit with someone who plays something quite well. You play it once, you play it another time, 3 times, 4 times, as long as the master is happy, and then you move to a next one. So basically, this is what I was trying to do by playing with different musicians, by learning, from what they were doing. For example, the very first Turkish piece that I was faced with was this. Okay, I was asked to play this. So imagine you're a harpist and you're looking at this. Already you see a strange kind of flat, the other way around, and then an F sharp. So what does that mean? So that means the B is microtonal. Okay, but how low? You have to know that in the Rast makam, this is the makam name, it is like before music was tempered, the third was lower, right? The major third was a bit lower. It's this much lower. So, so it's 0.15 cents. And on the tuner is like instead of having a 440, you tune it to 437. So if you tune your B to 437, you obtain that pitch, roughly. So I'm looking at this, and then the singer says, oh, I'm going to be playing it on D. I'm going to be singing on D. Because you have to learn how to transpose, basically. Because a female singer comes, wants to start on a different note. A male one comes with a baritone, a bass comes, a tenor comes. They all sing starting from different pitches, right? So immediately you have to be able to sort of transpose. Sight reading, you have to be able to transpose. So I began, on D. When I came at the end of the very first line, when I jumped, I had no idea what the next note was. It's just by jumping from staff to staff, I lost where I was. Otherwise, it's okay, because you see it's a little bit up, down, you see a third, you go a third down. But I was completely lost. And for a left hand, what do we do for a left hand? You have, yeah, yeah.
So you wouldn't retune the harp you would just transpose everything.
No, I tuned. Here, I would have to tune the B. But because the singer wants to sing it on D, it would be the F sharp.
So what is the tuning formula for chant?
I usually tune it in like lever harp tuning. Either it can be at most 3 flats, right? Okay. But I usually do either 1 or 2. Mm-hmm. I never required an A flat. So I didn't play things that required 3 flats. Basically 2 flats or one flat, just a B flat.
And how many strings?
25 or so. Mm-hmm.
So there are no levers, right?
No, I have levers. I'll bring to masterclass tomorrow. You can play. Actually, everyone can give it a try. Yeah, I had some levers put on it because I'm sure that 3,000 years ago they didn't have levers, but the music probably didn't even require it. I think the music was much more simple. But nowadays, for sure you need a F natural in the second line. What do? You mean you don't play in this? You don't play that? So basically, so I had to learn how to transpose, like sight reading, like the simple tunes like that, and figure out the left hand immediately. It's a bit like jazz, actually. It's like a shorthand, but you have to know where the melody goes. You have to be able to support it with a little bass line. And of course, then comes the improvisation part of it. So of course, you don't improvise this at all. This is a little hymn. It's sung. But the art of taksim, it's the biggest art form in Turkish music. It's the part that the performer improvises. So it can be ahead of a piece to set the mood, okay? It can be from going from one piece to another, which are in different makam. So that you have to know how to modulate. You improvise by modulating, and you have to show a lot of mastery of the instrument at the same time. And then it can also be towards the end of a piece, a fast piece where everyone, it's an ensemble piece, everyone keeps the rhythm, and then it's much like a jazz solo, So you improvise either in rhythm or in a arrhythmical way, but given a steady rhythm going underneath you. So, and all of that, all this combination of these three ways of improvising can be found in every single concert of Turkish music in different ways. And then, of course, there was as I said, arranging and accompanying. So how do you make something like that sound even on the chang, or it can be on the lever harp or on the harp? So basically, I started thinking, how does the harp speak? If you are given just a simple tune, how can we make it sing and speak on the harp? So it became actually a very good exercise for the brain. And when I started to be a little bit more comfortable, then finally I made a recording with, this time out of my comfort zone, with traditional Turkish musicians and instruments, where every piece had an element of these things that I just described, right? So it required a different kind of preparation. No score reading where everything is written. I mean, we just see the tune, but you have to make elaborate music, basically, based on that. So we can listen a little bit of improvisation I made in the beginning of the very first piece of this recording.
Love the outfit.
Oh, yeah, that's... Okay. Why am I not getting it? Okay. That's the beginning of the tune. Okay, so basically this is something I played only once in the recording without, you don't really prepare it. You do it once and you cannot reproduce it one more time. And you don't write it down either. So there is as much unwritten material in Turkish music as there is written. So you have to master not only what you see, but what you don't see, and you should produce there. So this gave actually a whole new sort of skill to do it, I mean, it's endless. I consider myself a beginner in it. I don't think I will ever evolve into a very developed improviser. But even to do this much really sort of changes your perspective about music and how to make even something sound nice on a harp that has only from the middle C up. The Cheng has only from the middle C up. Okay, so your idea about having a bass or a left hand has to be the lowest string is the C, the middle C. So even your idea of bass, when we use big bass, big chords, and they don't exist.
What strings are you using?
Some Baroque gauge gut strings.
Gut string.
Yeah. And they never break because there's no tension, not much tension.
Tension strings are lighter.
They're very light.
They're very light.
Yeah, they're very light. And actually, the difficult thing when you have a lot of calluses to play harp, which is very loose, you should really have no calluses to play the Cheng. So to switch back and forth is not easy. So when you're very lazy, you can play the Cheng. I do my best when I haven't played the harp for a while, So let's go. Okay, so basically just doing these little exercises, improvisation, and just transposing and up and down. Those were the skills like maybe that you would learn in a theory class, but you would never get to put them into real life because we're not required of doing that, and I wasn't until age 40 or so. But then all of a sudden I felt like, oh, okay, another part of my brain is developing as a musician, and then just tunes started to come to my mind by just being in this environment, and just by playing music, other things just started to pop out, and so I decided to write them down. Of course, there are a number of things to consider. I think I put in the wrong order. I wanted to actually show you the original tune as I wrote it, but I guess I didn't. Yeah, I missed it. It's okay. But of course, this is an arrangement of something where I compose only the top part. It's melodic style of composition. You compose only the melody first. And I just, like on a monostaff, just write the melody. And you have to consider when you want to play it on the harp, would you be playing it a little bit up or down? Because when the melody comes, it doesn't matter what note you start on, because it's just pure music, all right? But would it sound better a little bit lower on the pedal harp? If you're writing for the lever harp, will it be better on a little bit higher? So you have to consider all these issues of register. Where does the harp ring the best for this kind of tune? And what is the range to make the tune really show off the harp in a way? So the function of the left hand. So what kind of left hand do you see?
Is it like chordal left hand?
Yeah, but not big chords, right? Mm-hmm. So this piece has a rhythmic movement in 3, 2, 2, 3. So the left hand's major function would be to give this pulsation, okay, to give the pattern. It has to enhance the pattern. It should be a little bit like a little percussive instrument. But of course, if it is too narrow, the intervals are too narrow, then the harp wouldn't sound. So you have to be able to jump and offer some, air between things so that it rings well. And then you have to find some embellishments, to create some variations, because the tune, you repeat it a lot, and you'll create variations by doing embellishments, much like in early music. And when they repeated something in Bach, the first time is one way, the second time another way. And all the music up to that period, a lot of improvisation and performance, right? So that gives a lot of sort of freedom in a way. And of course, you have to find some idiomatic features also to enhance the tune. So once in a while, you have to have a glissando somewhere. I mean, for example, there's one there hidden. I mean, it doesn't jump to you when I play it, but it really provides a wash of colors there, and then something nice to do with the left hand as you go back to repeat this part. So, little things like that. So I got to know the harp better. So I got to understand why we love our harp pieces, why we love pieces we play by harpist composers, because they're so much better written, right? Because they know all the ins and outs and all the idioms basically that they speak their best. And this is another piece, for example, and that on the left-hand side, this is how I composed it. All right, and from there, I had to make this. So when I compose, I don't play, right? I don't play immediately on the harp. You just write it down, and then you have to arrange it for the harp. So that's another work. It doesn't come all together, right? It's a two-part process. So and here, just the rhythm was another consideration. I mean, the most important consideration for the left hand, actually. And it's not too covered, as you can see. The left hand should not empower the right hand, because the melody should be really dominant, because very melody-driven music. So the left hand should never be too thick or too weak. Should provide the rhythm, should provide enough textures underneath, but not cover the right hand. So that part, going from that to that, is a lot of fun. It is just one of the nicest things I have encountered in music. Just arranging a piece, transcribing something, or arranging a tune. Then, of course, I mentioned yesterday in the concert, by playing things like that, I was asked to write them down for others, because I was not writing them down. The arrangements, I would make them up, and then I would just play them, and they would change over time. But for others to play, I had to sit down and write, and that made me reconsider the arrangements I had made, even just going over and over and over. Eventually, they got better. So this collection is a cross-section of what Turkish music is. So basically, when you look at the whole collection, and when you have studied a few pieces from different series under each series in the collection, you understand a little bit what this music is, this tradition is made of. You kind of have like a survey, basically. And so I have some original works also, transcriptions, original works based on traditional elements, and there are different genres and styles. So I made sure that there is enough contrast. There's old and new. There's lever harp and pedal harps. So I made a larger portion actually is for lever harp. Okay, and it was made because I had to sit down a lot to do this. Right, I had to write, to play not, but to write. It took months and months. So I had to have a grant. So that it could be digitally typesetted, and then made nice design, and then all that time that went into that had to have some kind of financial backup as well, so I could really dedicate myself to it. So I had a small grant, a very modest grant, but that covered expenses and made me feel like it was okay to refuse a number of concerts or engagements that I didn't have to do, basically.
Şirin, the one which you sent to me and I have in my studio, do you mind if I share with the students just to look and play through?
No, I brought everything. I have a gift for the harp library.
Yeah.
Yes, of all the pieces I played yesterday. Actually, those.
There is right now a new requirement for all students to include kind of rare.
Okay.
It is problematic. So of course we are looking for women composers, which we don't have, but something unusual. Coming from Africa. After your concert yesterday, I said everybody's playing Şirin's arrangement.
Oh.